In a cotton gin, 18 of these rollers are in constant use during the season, with 20 in reserve. Each cost $20,000. Their job is to separate the cotton from the bud using these tiny saws. Some rollers last the full season, around 5 months. Others degenerate in as little as 6 weeks. Until now, the rollers had to be returned to the manufacturers in the United States for reconditioning, a costly and lengthy process. Now, Tetrin Engineering has devised a unique process that rewraps the saws and balances the roller at a third of the cost of a replacement.
Create more employment for the area. Once we get in the full-scale swing of things, we'll more than likely put more employment for tradesmen and whatever.
Now the company plans to patent the idea, but it's not the first breakthrough for Tetrin. These bars, with 120 to each cotton picker, frequently snap at the head. The only option was replacement. Now Tetrin are able to replace the damaged necks.
We've had to chase further afield into the wool, wheat and cotton areas because of the loss of the frigate contract and also the submarine contract for the local area. So we've had to go further afield to New South Wales and also Queensland to try and keep our men employed.
And the Army was forced to send these crankshafts from Leopard tanks back to Germany for reconditioning. Now they come direct to Tetrin. Rebecca Skinner for NBN News. It was December 1929 at the old Rothbury Colliery near Branxton. 10,000 miners came to protest at scab labourers being employed to operate the pit. It was the result of a 15-month lockout. The miners were fighting attempts to cut their wages. But it turned into a bloody riot. Police are believed to have fired 160 bullets. As many as 40 miners and police were wounded. One young miner, 28-year-old Norman Brown, was shot dead, apparently from a ricocheted bullet, the first time a trade unionist had been killed in an industrial dispute in Australia. The Rothbury riot has been recognised as one of the most violent incidents in the country's industrial history. This year, the Miners' Women's Auxiliary feared the anniversary may be forgotten. Little had been heard since from the survivors of the riot. So they organised a commemoration service and a memorial dedication at the riot site. 45 veterans from the Hunter, the youngest was 76, were presented with medallions specially struck for the day. Several contributed their stories to a special booklet. Later, wreaths were laid on the grave of Norman Brown. Ivor Davies and the band Icehouse need no introduction to music fans worldwide, but few would realise they have another passion, sailboarding. Whenever they tour, their boards travel with them, so they needed little persuasion to lend their name and their dollars to the world titles being held on Lake Macquarie from New Year's Eve.
We're sort of sponsoring, per se, one of the races, which is the 51-kilometre marathon. And I don't think I'll actually be doing the distance myself, but I'm sure I'll be with everybody in spirit.
Securing Icehouse's endorsement was a major coup for organisers. It's expected more than 400 windsurfers representing 15 countries will line up to compete. John Wilkinson, General Manager of the host club, Belmont's 16-footers, revealed today major changes have been made to the club's safety and catering arrangements in readiness for the event.
Among the crowd of enthusiasts on hand today, Australia's top-ranking windsurfers Jessica Crisp and Luke Hargraves. They joined Ivor in adding their names to a special petition that will be circulated during the titles, seeking support to make Newcastle the host of the 1990 World Cup titles in November next year. It's a diversified event and considered the Formula One of board riding, featuring such spectacular events as wave jumping. With our lakes and coastline, Ivor Davies believes Newcastle has the potential not only to host the World Cup, but to become the home of board riding.
I really do believe that we're blessed here with the perfect environment for these kinds of sports, and really I don't think yet we've made full advantage of these kinds of things.
It's a tradition which began 11 years ago when residents of a street in Taro decided to go all out for Christmas. The idea has spread, and this year 4 streets in the town have been decked out for the festive season. The displays are proving quite an attraction. Each evening people flock to the neighbourhood to stroll past the 75 decorated houses. Residents hope their novel idea will catch on, and even more homes will add their message of goodwill next Christmas.
At the Newcastle Mail Centre, it's not hard to see it's Christmas. Mail sorters have dressed for the festivities and parcels and letters are just pouring in. The centre usually handles 400,000 articles each day. Since December 1, that rate has increased to nearly 700,000. The staff of 130 workers has been increased by 15% to try and sort out the deluge. However, delays of 24 hours with deliveries are expected.
We'll be flat out trying to clear by Friday to get them all the mail out into the post offices for the postman to deliver that last bit before Christmas. The mail that is not in the system now would really have no chance of getting delivered by Friday.
Out on the street, there is little joy in Christmas for Merriweather postie Craig Hardy. Craig's load has doubled with the Yuletide cards and presents, but at least it's all good news.
It's better than delivering bills, of course. Yes, people are more happy, yeah, definitely.
Under aggregation proposals for northern New South Wales, the 3 existing regional operators are required to extend their services and compete against each other. The concept is designed to give viewers outside capital cities a choice of 3 channels. But in southern New South Wales, that experiment is a failure, with the stations becoming arms of the big city networks, local programming cut drastically, and some operators running up big losses. An independent report compiled by consultant Peter Cox forecasts that under aggregation, only 1 licensee in regional Australia would make an operating profit in the next 10 years. The Communications Minister, Ralph Willis, has been told by the regional stations that aggregation is not working, a view shared by NBN's Chief Executive, Joe Sweeney.
It is not a viable proposition.
Why not? What's wrong with aggregation? Where would it go wrong?
Well, John, as reported in this morning's press, NBN does 3 times more local programming than most other regional stations in Australia. Now, if you look at bringing 3 signals in to this area and to other areas throughout Australia, something has to give. And what they've found in the southern area, that the local programming content has dropped. Now, we don't want that to happen at NBN. I think NBN, over a period of time, it worked up to near enough to 18% of their total programming is local. And a very good service in that area, because we are in the 6th largest city in Australia. We have many things to say that, unless it's said to our community, it's not going to be said. And I can't see that being in a network news service.
As an alternative, the regional operators have offered to set up a multi-channel system. It would mean NBN, for instance, operating a second signal in the Hunter, showing first-run primetime programs and a choice of sports telecasts. The stations argue this can be achieved much more cheaply than through aggregation, much faster, and wouldn't threaten the viability of stations which employ hundreds of staff.
Now, what would happen then, we would provide what we call a multi-channel service, which would be like another television station running out of NBN. So other popular programs that we cannot accommodate at the moment, because we can't place all programs, would be accommodated on the second service, which would be another commercial service.
An announcement 4 days ago by Mines and Energy Minister Pickard that the sale of Elcom's 132 kV transmission lines would go ahead brought morale to an all-time low. Uneasy workers met today with management in a closed session to find out about their future.
We are only now, in the last 24 hours, in a position where we know definitely and for sure that the sale is going to go ahead, and we've had some indication as to what it might mean for all of us, but nobody individually knows what's going to happen to them.
The sale of the 132 kV lines takes a great debt and workload off Elcom and must mean a substantial reduction in labour. Figures given from management to staff have marked 133 workers to either be transferred to Shortland County Council, redeployed to another Elcom base or face the sack. The news of more uncertainty was met with great bitterness by workers just 3 days before Christmas.
It's just another example of monumental insensitivity on the part of the Greiner government and also, we believe, Elcom management. It's quite brutal.
Two of America's fastest sprint car drivers, Danny Smith and Jeff Gordon, will head the big lineup of drivers to contest the $10,000 Winfield Sprint Car International this Saturday night at the Motordrome. Danny Smith has competed in Australia and Newcastle previously with an enviable record of wins and currently holds the 20-lap record at the Motordrome. The other American is 18-year-old Jeff Gordon, who last year won both the Iowa and Indiana championships, becoming the youngest man ever to win an Open Championship Series in the United States. The Americans will be taking on the best in Australia, including father and son team of George and Brooke Tatnell, who are currently running first and second in the $300,000 ASC Series. Also a powerhouse will be Max Dumsney, the fastest man ever at the Motordrome.
Queenslander Mick Rowell, a former Grand National driver, and dozens of hard-charging hopefuls will be determined to get their hands on some of the big purse.
Chairman of the Bus Employees Union David Winwood claims this morning's horrific bus crash on the mid-north coast spurred the union into action.
We're all very concerned at the horrific crash up the coast of the tourist buses. You know, I believe there's over 40 people dead, and we have a bus here that does over 100 kilometres an hour. In fact, some of our drivers have had it to 120 when testing it. Now, we took the decision that that bus was unsafe.
The union claims they requested to management that bus 2805 be taken off the road.
So what happened when you took your request to Mr Regan?
Well, there was a bit of an altercation between Mr Regan and the organiser standing there, in the sense that our request or our notice informing Mr Regan what action was being taken over 2805 was torn out of his hands, screwed up and thrown in the garbage tin.
No, it's not correct. They stormed into my office. They held up a piece of paper saying bus 2805, that's the number of the bus, is black. Now, we don't deal with unions that way. We have a dispute settlement procedure which says if you've got a concern, you come and discuss it with us.
The union blackbanned the bus and called a lightning strike, but after receiving an apology from Mr Regan and an assurance that the bus would be taken off the road, the men went back to work. Mr Regan claims the bus in question is safe and that today's strike was politically motivated.
Well, perhaps they may have been trying to address their own political agenda in some cheap way that disadvantaged the people of Newcastle.
Both the union and Mr Regan have given assurances that bus travel over Christmas will not be affected. However, if bus 2805 goes back on the road, then the union says it will strike again. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
Fire engulfed bushland at Neath, shooting flames 10 metres into the air. Homeowners watched helplessly as the blaze was fought literally in their own backyards.
Well, I'll tell you what, I get scared because I've got nothing insured. If I get burned out, well, where have I got to go?
While the flames were eventually doused, the firemen from Abermain and Weston remained on alert.
But situations like this can blow up to extreme conditions at any time.
Just minutes later, a call to nearby Weston, where another outbreak threatened houses. Hampered by strong winds and billowing smoke, firemen worked desperately to save the houses. Local residents worked with the professionals as the fire raced through Crown bushland. Police fear the blaze may have been deliberately lit. Tonight, the fire brigade report the situation has been controlled with no loss to property. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Coordinator of the rescue teams at the Newcastle Workers Club, Inspector Ian Cleary, spoke to the media late this afternoon.
There's a 300-ton retaining wall up on the second floor, which is on a 60-degree angle, and it's being held by a false ceiling up on that floor. And if it moves, which is very light, if it moves, it'll crash down onto the floor, which is directly above where the workers are, and that'll probably bring the next floor down and crash down and make it an impossible situation. So we're working very quickly to try and get these, whatever we can do, to get these people out in as shortest time as possible. But it's a very slow, methodical job, unfortunately, and that's the worst feature. We have to be slow, and yet we want to be quick, because we're getting heat-seeking instruments in here. They'll be here shortly. We'll ask everybody to move away from here and make no noise, and the heat-seeking instruments will try and locate where there are bodies. There's 3 of those going to be here very shortly.
So the 300-ton slab of concrete is the problem now?
Yes, and there's nothing we can do about it. We can't hold it back, because where we want to hold it back would be on the floor which we don't want to give. And there's nothing we can do to hold it back. So that is the problem at the moment.
And the rest of the building, are you worried that could topple at any stage?
Yes, the whole building is in a very dangerous situation at the moment.
Also, can you give us an update on the number of fatalities here and the number injured?
There are 2 deceased here, 2 confirmed deceased at the moment, and there are 20 injured. But there are still also people still in the building, and we can't say what condition they're in at this stage.
Do you know how many people might still be trapped?
No, not really. I could say 50, but I really don't know.
How severe are the injuries to those 20 people you mentioned?
In various states, some are quite severe.
Do you have any idea at all just how many people may be inside?
We don't. We've taken the numbers of all the cars that have been in there, and we're putting them through our computer and asking their families who was at the club today. And that way we might be able to try and find out who was safe and who's not. The whole of Newcastle has been badly affected by this tremor, and I think as the next few days go past we'll realise just exactly how bad it was. The junction itself got a bad setback. If you have a look in that area, there's a lot of buildings badly affected by the tremor there also.
Very badly damaged. So I suppose there's a lot of people away on holidays who haven't yet reported damage that may be...
That's very possibly, yes, that could be true, but there'll be a lot of damage coming in over the next few weeks when everybody comes home.
Among the dramatic events of the day comes a truly heroic effort from a local ambulance officer. Paramedic Ken Isles was one of the first ambulance officers on scene at the Newcastle Workers Club and climbed through twisted steel and concrete to the club's auditorium. Before the quake hit, road crews were setting up for a concert tonight. Moments later, they were trapped beneath rubble. Ken heard a faint cry for help and began moving towards the faint plea.
He was in a baby-like crouch position. It was a matter of police rescue and 2 civilians and myself removing a considerable amount of brick and removing him as quickly as we could, because there was still some more debris above that with the potential of coming down on top of us. So it was a matter of moving as quickly as we could, but being aware that there was more debris on the top.
So it was quite a delicate operation?
Very delicate, yes. The 2 civilians that were there really need to be commended. They were terrific.
How was the man himself?
He has multiple limb fractures, I believe. I don't have X-ray vision. I was pretty concerned at that time that he may have had some more serious injuries, but that seems to have rectified itself.
How long were you up there?
I honestly don't know. I broke my watch earlier in the job. I have no idea how long I was there. It would have been probably 45 minutes, I'd say.
So were you talking? Was he conscious?
He was talking to us the whole time, yes.
What was he saying?
Oh, he was complaining about the pain in his lower limbs and that he couldn't feel one of his lower limbs.
How was his morale? How was his mood?
It seemed to be high until he realised it was close to being released, and then he started to become more and more concerned, naturally enough.
Were there any signs of other people up there?
He is concerned that there may be other people up there. I believe the authorities are up there now with heat-seeking equipment. He was concerned at one stage that there were cleaners in the auditorium.
Did you see any sign of people?
No.
How dangerous are the conditions for rescue personnel?
They're very dangerous. Everything up there is quite unstable.
Just describe the inside of it.
A bloody mess. The complete mezzanine floor of the auditorium has fallen down. There's bricks and debris, and the roof is hanging quite precariously up there.
Coordinator of the rescue teams at the
It used to be one of Newcastle's most imposing structures, the giant Newcastle Workers Club. This morning it was jammed with